a public health crisis after recording 953 homicides since 2019, with 825 black victims. Leaders say they'll work across sectors to develop solutions. And former North Carolina NAACP leader Reverend William Barber was arrested at the U.S. Capitol while praying against proposed cuts to Social Security and Medicaid. He and 2 others were charged with a misdemeanor for obstructing the rotunda. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
It's now time for Let's Elevate, the Arnie and Carey Show with Arnie Filko and Cary Grant.
All right, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
This is Arnie Filko.
And this is Cary Grant.
And we are here at the beautiful WBOK studios on a lovely Tuesday night for Elevated Conversations.
Elevated Conversations. Arnie, I just want to tell you that I just came back from a short trip to Southern California, was in Hollywood, and it's really something to see your handprints and your name in cement and a star on the Walk of Fame.
Did you pay the $75,000 for that?
No, I got this for free, so I'm really, really honored.
That's pretty good, pretty good. Well, we may, as we talked about last week, we may eventually have a NOLA Walk of Fame like they have in Hollywood.
Yes.
And that'd be pretty cool, as you and I have talked about.
There are so many stars on the ground there that it's incredible. If we could do something like that, talk about an economic generator.
Yes.
It's incredible how many stars they have.
Yeah. Well, we just walked out of, came into the studio, and our good friend, great broadcaster Gerard Stevens preceded us.
Yes.
And, he wanted me to tell our listening audience that he hasn't yet made the final decision on running for mayor. So you have to wait and see what Gerard decides on that.
He's building his coalition.
He is definitely building that coalition.
Building
and which, just to follow up on something he said, folks, go out and vote on Saturday.
Absolutely. Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Today's Tuesday. You can't do early voting anymore. You can only go on Saturday. But it's a really important election. Apparently, the numbers are down, a very low turnout.
Yes.
But it's an important, at least in Orleans, other parishes have other things, including Jefferson Parish has a really interesting council race going on. Runoff. But for Orleans, the issue is the renewal, and I want to highlight renewal of the tax millage for the sheriff. Really important. This is about 20% or more of her budget. And if they don't fund it through this millage, it's going to come right back to the city council and the city, and they're going to have to find money.
They're going to have serious issues. And I really appreciated the sheriff being on last week to talk about it and to clear up some of those those issues with misinformation. And they're doing TV commercials. I've seen a lot of stuff on social media, so I'm glad they're making a fight.
Yeah.
And the public needs to understand you need to show up. These numbers are going to be very low.
Yeah.
So
and don't be fooled out there by the misinformation or the signs. This is not a new tax. This is not costing you anything extra.
No.
But if you want to be safe and if you want to have quality programming and you want to treat people right, the answer is to vote yes on the renewal. So go ahead and do that on Saturday and take care of it.
And if you're going out, Saturday, of course, everybody will be going to Jazz Fest, stuff like that. Make it part of the day, Arnie. I was thinking about that. It's so quick because it's one item on the ballot. On your way to Jazz Fest, you could stop off at the polling place.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it wouldn't take but a minute.
Well, we're going to get into some serious stuff tonight, but a few stories that I thought were worthy of discussion. One of them was involving our university here at Xavier.
Yeah.
That they became the first HBCU to have a co-ed varsity rowing team.
Yes.
Now that's pretty neat
that's
for
pretty
New Orleans.
Cool, yeah.
Because rowing is not exactly a big sport here, in New Orleans, but that's big.
Yeah, when I spent some time in Boston, that's a huge sport up there. And, early in the morning, you see these people rowing in the fog, basically. But it's quite a sport now. It seems like a real phenomenal thing, and I'm really proud of the kids who want to participate in this. This is really amazing.
It is. I was reading that they, when they practice here, they're up at 5:30.
Yeah, you have to get up early to row.
And so there's a lot of dedication. Anybody that doesn't know a lot about rowing, go and watch the movie. I forgot the name of it, about the American team that got selected
It was
before
just recent.
the 1936 Olympics.
Yeah.
And how they selected it. And it was a very interesting story about a sport.
It's something boys.
I'm trying to think of it myself, but it was a lot of fun. A really good movie, and look, this is really precedent setting. Not only are you the first team within the HBCU community, but it's also a co-ed varsity team. So I just, Xavier's like Dillard, like Suno, all of them are doing great things. But Xavier really just continues to impress me. And by the way, we'll maybe promo this next week. But Xavier is celebrating its centennial
next May 8th.
May 8th, a week from Thursday, I think it is.
Which is also the anniversary of the canonization of Catherine Drexel, which is the coincidence of those two events having milestones at the same time is really amazing. A saint who's this school's was named for, who founded the school.
Yeah.
And as well, back to the rowing thing, Xavier has put together a baseball team recently and cheerleading. They won a national competition in cheerleading. And I think it's really great to see a small HBCU branch out like that. Say, let's try and do something that maybe a school like us wouldn't do. And, and they've been successful at it. So that's pretty
very
good.
Non-traditional, but
it's a great idea.
Could very well lead other schools to look
to
at
do
the
same
sport.
thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, kudos to Xavier and Dr. Verrett and the coaches and student athletes. I think that is really great. We got to talk for a couple minutes about the draft.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I was right. I'll say that up front.
You were, okay. Carey has Shedeur Sanders going number 9 in the first round.
I just said I'm not going to the Saints. I wasn't that cruel to him.
That still is a bit of a mystery. I think people are starting to surmise what may have happened.
Yeah.
My feeling is this was about his father, and
could be.
I think I my years of following the NFL and being in the NFL, what surprised me is the NFL is hardcore, man. They look for football players.
Absolutely.
And I think it was very hard for anybody to justify that Shedeur was not at least a
second or third round.
Yeah.
When it got past the second round, I thought for sure the third round, and that was bad enough. But I'm with you. The fifth round is just really outlandish for a guy like that. I had my beefs about him, but I do not think he's a fifth rounder.
Yeah,
I really don't.
No, and I actually, I think he's going to prove some people wrong.
I
he's got a real chance with he got drafted by the Cleveland Browns, and they drafted another quarterback 2 rounds ahead of him, which is really surprising. But their roster of quarterbacks is not exactly Joe Namath. Okay,
no.
So.
And they have space for the future. One thing I'll say about the guy, and like I said, I have some beefs with his skills and stuff like that. But one thing that could help him a lot is he could actually be on their roster because Flacco will probably be their starting quarterback. He's a much older quarterback. And if he had a year or so to get acclimated to the NFL and systems and stuff like that, I think it would do him a lot of good. So he might be in a kind of ideal situation to really – not have to step out on the field first day, that kind of thing. I think that will help him. I really believe that about him.
No, I agree. And I will say, Carey, one thing that I really liked about him is, you're sitting there after the 5th round. Sure. It's the third day.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to be extremely depressing and discouraging.
And you got all this media coverage on
it. The media is all over it. But as soon as he got selected, he got so positive. He said, I'm so grateful, et cetera, et cetera. That's the kind of young man you want on a team. I mean, yes, it's nice to have a chip on your shoulder, which I'm sure he does. I'm sure he's not going to talk about competitively.
Right.
But to have that kind of attitude after what had to be a miserable Thursday and Friday, I think is pretty impressive.
And I have to mention in the context of this as well, the worst part of the whole draft situation with him was this foolishness from the coach's son from Atlanta who called and – tells him, you're going to be drafted, wait till later, and laughing and all that like that. And, I mean, Jeff Albrecht was always a good player and a good guy. I really hope he shows some real fatherhood on this and really handles this kid because the NFL is going to still look into this. I know that. Yeah. I mean, and it may cost this coach a few dollars, but he needs to take care of his son more than anything else, because this is not a prank.
No.
This was a real cruel thing. The one thing, that guy's 21, the kid who did this to Shadur's around the same age, but these are still kids. I mean, they're still young guys. I mean, you know, fragile egos, you know, you doing all this stuff, cameras in your faces all day. That was just a very wrong-headed and very nasty thing to do.
Absolutely terrible. And, you know, they use Mickey Loomis,
which is even worse, because, you know, they said it's the Saints calling from Atlanta.
Right. Which, you know, if you're the player and you get a call like that from the Saints, you're thinking, well, this is a logical fit.
Exactly.
So really, really bad. And, but I do think the Saints filled a lot of needs. I mean, they picked, I think it's 9 players. Filled literally 7 or 8 different positions. You know, it's going to be real interesting, because also over the weekend was Derek Carr's, which was really bizarre. He's on the dais of a church.
He's preaching.
And he starts talking about his
football
injury.
career.
I mean, the whole thing. Jeff Duncan, who's a great columnist, wrote an article today saying, "Look, we don't know what the heck is going on here. The Saints don't talk; they should be talking. Derek Carr's talking. We don't even know what he means by it.
I don't know what's going on with that guy. I think he's going to end up traded. I said that before. I do. There's other teams that still need quarterbacking and all that. And I don't think he's happy here. I don't know what's going on with him. I
know you're still excited because Aaron Rodgers is still available here. All right, I'm not. I think we got a caller.
Hey, Arnie.
Good evening.
Hello.
I'm trying to get you off speakerphone, but I can't. So can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. How you doing?
Okay, good. This is Coach from Ben Franklin. How you doing?
Hey, Coach. Okay. How you doing?
Hi.
I'm doing all right. I want to just make a comment about Shedeur Sanders.
Absolutely. Yes.
It's just amazing to me how his confidence was twisted to being cocky. And I look at the guy the Saints drafted from Louisville. I mean, if you compare those two number by number, Shedeur stands out. And I agree with you that I think it was catch back at Dion, because the NFL is about, like you said, getting good players. So why would you even pass on this dude and pick somebody up with far less talent? I mean, look at Colorado before him, Dion and Shedeur got there, and look at Colorado when he's leaving.
No question.
You can't even compare. And I don't know for sure, but I heard this guy from Louisville. Not only is he older, but he's been banged up a lot. Is that true?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the QB from Louisville is 26 years old, which by NFL standards is that's pretty old.
Yeah. You say 26?
26.
Wow.
Yeah, because he basically had 2 years where he basically had 2 years where he didn't play because of injuries.
Right.
So,
yeah, he was banged up during his career. Look, you know, time will tell. I mean, I think, as we talked about a few minutes ago, I think he's in a perfect situation with Cleveland. He doesn't have to start year one. They can work on any deficiencies he might have.
Right.
You know, the deficiency that I heard football-wise was that when he gets pressure, you know, he tends to, you know, to go to the left and the right, and you know, and that's not what they want him to do. But, you know, NFL coaches can correct that and will correct that. So I think it's going to be fascinating to watch. You know, as far as the Saints selection, you know, it's just too early to tell. I will say this, if Derek Carr does not come back, this is a quarterback that could easily get thrown into the mix very early.
Yes.
And maybe this guy's age and maturity might be an advantage.
I think that's
in that regard, which is probably why they drafted him.
I think that's part of it. Yes.
But we'll see, Coach. It was a really interesting weekend, I have to tell you.
I know somebody that works for the Saints and very well, and my take is, from what he told me, and of course he's not a coach, but there's whispers around the camp that what's the new coach's name? Kellen Moore.
Yes.
Kellen Moore's going to start this season. Don't be surprised if you see Spencer Rattler by now.
I believe that's where we're going, to be totally honest with you.
Right. He told me don't be surprised.
No, I would not be surprised.
It would not be surprising, no.
With the new offensive line, it will work.
I'm just so very, 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 and I'm gonna say another very disappointed that we let that guy sit there and not draft him. I just find that, and not only us, some kind of conspiracy. It's got to be. You can't tell me that Gabriel from Oregon and these other people are better than Shedeur. There's no way in HE double hockey stick. No way.
Well, I think we agree with you. I mean, again, in all my years, as I said, I have never seen NFL teams go away from football skills and be affected by off the field stuff. And again, I'm surmising. I'm not in the room. I don't know. Maybe they think he's not a great quarterback, but that is just so different than the NFL norm.
And the one that's more puzzling, Coach, the one that's more puzzling to me is Pittsburgh, because Pittsburgh literally doesn't have a quarterback on their roster. So
that's
I mean, they have no one. So that one was really surprising.
That's why I agree with Arnie when he says he didn't say the word conspiracy. I said that's why I think there was some kind of conspiracy. I mean, look at Ryan Leaf, troublemaker. Johnny Manziel, troublemaker. But they're still taking shots. I mean, they took shots with him.
Yeah.
I just don't understand it. I'm just disappointed in my Saints. I've been a season ticket holder 27 years. I'm not going to give up my tickets, but I will show my displeasure.
Understood.
Understand. I think a lot of fans feel the same way. And, you know, when you talk conspiracy, it's not so out of the norm. I mean, you remember Colin Kaepernick, and it's still hard. It's still hard to believe that he could not get back into the league.
And that was definitively a conspiracy.
Well, thanks, Coach. Really appreciate you calling.
Thank you.
All right, man.
Have a good night.
All right, you're welcome.
Thank you.
You know, before we get off the draft, Carey, I got to tell you a nice story.
Okay.
So, for those in New Orleans who may know, a gentleman by the name of Baron Sorrell, University of Texas, defensive end.
Yeah, okay.
New Orleans native, and went to Holy Cross.
Wow, yeah.
And he stayed went to Green Bay, stayed in the green room for 3 days. Got drafted by the Packers.
Wow.
You may have seen the fourth-round draft pick.
Yeah.
The fans just ate him up.
Oh,
okay?
wow. Yeah.
So I called some
I didn't
of my
realize
friends.
that he had that connection.
He does. I called some of my friends at Holy Cross over the weekend. I said, could you give me the contact? Yeah. And I had such a lovely conversation with his mother today.
Oh, that's great.
And I have to tell you, they are so excited.
I bet.
Not only about being drafted, but going to Green Bay. Obviously, you know, they're Saints fans, obviously. Yeah. But I gave him some of my, background of Wisconsin and told him anything I can do. But it was such a pleasure to talk to a family that was so grateful that their son is now in the NFL.
That's great. I mean, there's been a lot of, there's been almost too much coverage about the Shedeur Sanders thing because there's so many other great stories in the draft, like what you just said. And the one that touched me was, especially because it made me realize who the guy that we drafted first, Kelvin Banks, is, with the situation with his mother being very ill and his whole family situation that he went through. That he seems like a great young man. Same thing, or just somebody who's humble. Even though he was a first-round draft pick, he really showed that this meant a lot to him as well. This means a lot to people. They sacrificed a lot to get to this point. And like you said, their families are very grateful.
For the player and the families.
Everybody.
People forget the fact that these kids started at 6 years old, and their mother and father
go to every game,
drove them to every place and every practice, and so it's a holiday and a celebration for the entire family unit, and
really is.
I just think it's great. All right, we're going to take a break. We'd love to hear from you tonight. 504-582-9422. We're going to transition into some news outside of sports when we come back, and we would love to hear from you.
We'll be right back.
That's right. It's party time each and every Sunday night at 7 p.m. on WBOK. It's the Throwback Throwdown with DJ Wick as he brings you the best in old school from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and the early 2Ks. Plus, the party goes to another level at 9 p.m. with the Throwback Throwdown Party Mix to round out the night. It's the Throwback Throwdown Sunday nights at 7 p.m. on WBOK and on the World Wide Web at WBOK1230.com.
Trying to grow your business or increase traffic to your location? We can help. WBOK 1230 AM has a number of solutions that will meet your individual needs. Give one of our consultants a call today at 504-582-9420 or email us at info@WBOK1230.com. And remember, an investment with WBOK is an investment in our community. Call today.
Norman Robinson is back.
Can you hear me now?
And he's taking no prisoners.
Can you hear me now?
Each weekday, Norman Robinson brings you commentary with Off the Top.
The incident was shocking, disturbing, disgusting, disappointing, and sad.
Each weekday, Off the Top with Norman Robinson is heard exclusively right here.
It's Off the Top with Norman Robinson on WBOK 1230 AM.
WBOK online at WBOK1230.com.
The Arnie and Carey Show with Arnie Philco and Cary Grant.
All right, we are back.
We are back.
6:21. Hope everybody's having a good rest of the day and evening. Just a couple tidbits on something. We lost in New Orleans a really great man over the last couple days, Robert Bob Merrick, who, Cary, you probably know. And, you know, Bob was the owner of Ladder and Bloom. Mm-hmm. He bought it in 1986, and it was amazing to see the success. When he bought it, it was worth $350 million in sales. And at its peak before the pandemic, the company volume was topping $6 billion. Wow. It was amazing growth. And, you know, I got to know Bob a little bit throughout my career, and just a real gentleman. And I know he was battling cancer and really battled that for quite a number of years. But we lost a really great person with that. And the other one we lost, I don't, since we were on the show last, was Paul Batiste.
Paul Batiste, yes.
Yeah. Yes. And
very great man.
Yes, really great. Everybody knows the Batiste family in New Orleans. I'm very good friends with Damon.
Yes.
And in fact, Damon's putting on a concert tomorrow night. If anybody's interested, I think it's at 6:30 over on Broadway in St. Charles in honor of Paul. And just, you know, reading I didn't really know Paul all that well, but just reading his background. He was a teacher and taught so many young men and women, you know, about music but also life.
Yeah. He's another one of those guys who's kind of in the fabric of New Orleans, which, you know, in every city has that, but New Orleans particularly, where we have these people who are kind of underneath the surface, people who are known, but, you know, not just well known, but they actually have a tremendous influence on a lot of lives. And we're fortunate to have a city that has a lot of that.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, the Batiste family is just tremendous.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not only Damon, I've got to know David. And, David Batiste is just a wonderful human being, a great musician. And, you know, everybody remembers John Batiste, you know, from his days in New York and such. But the whole family is just amazing. When they get up on a stage, it's like, you know, it's like, how did this happen? Everybody is an incredibly talented musician. And it's so our condolences go out to the entire Batiste family. Yes. Well, Trump didn't win an election in America last night, but he did win an election in Canada. Because Canada went to the polls last night for its new prime minister. And I have to tell you, the Liberal Party, which was Justin Trudeau's party up until a few months ago, was basically down and out. I mean, they were falling apart. They were falling apart. People looked at them as not in tune with where Canada was, until Donald Trump came
walked in the door
and said, "You ought to be our 51st state, and we're putting tariffs on you." And the conservative candidate absolutely had no chance after that because it was really, are you voting yes or no on Donald Trump?
Exactly. It was a referendum across the border, and it definitely turned the tide. I agree with you. It turned the tide completely around pretty much because that's why Trudeau went out to begin with. And within this great 100 days, I mean, it basically has turned the whole Canadian government around and created Canadian nationalism where even Quebec is saying we're part of Canada, and they've been wanting to be separated for 1,000 years.
I mean, you got Western Canada and Nova Scotia and Montreal now all together. You know, rah for Canada.
And they abandoned again.
Yes.
So
look, our president does have a really great knack to bring people together.
Right.
And he did that in the Canadian election. It'll be real interesting to see where the relationship goes now with the new prime minister, who's, by the way, if you watch him on television, he's pretty aggressive. I mean, he's not afraid to go after Trump. And
his whole acceptance speech seemed to be like, I don't care for you, and I'll say whatever I want.
Exactly.
It was really interesting.
Very interesting.
Really.
Well, I want to get into a couple stories that, to me, are just really ugly, I have to say, Carey. And they have some similarity to it. One was, for whatever reason, there was a bunch of tattoo artists that came to town and decided they were going to party in Frenchman Street with another gentleman from one of our local companies who has since been fired, by the way. Yeah. And they started giving Nazi salutes
it was crazy.
And Nazi slogans and, I mean, just despicable stuff.
Yeah.
And fortunately, you know, they got exposed on social media and some photos.
The internet never loses.
No. Gambit wrote an article about it. But look, I don't think we need to say much more about the fact that in New Orleans, Nazis, you're not welcome.
Not at all. Not
White
at all.
supremacists, you're not welcome.
Not at all.
And get off the streets of our city.
And especially not on a street like Frenchman Street, which is all about joy and happiness, and people are very, very much, for lack of a better word, liberal, whatever. I mean, it's that kind of environment where it's live and let live. It's nobody's down there talking about excluding people from anything. So it's just, like you said, truly not welcome in our city.
Yeah, it was bad. The other story hits home to me very, very personally. So people may know about a New Orleans trumpeter by the name of Nicholas Payton.
Yes.
Who is a Grammy award-winning musician.
Right.
Also was named a year ago as the head person for the brass department of Berklee School of Music, which Berklee would be similar to the Harvard.
Absolutely.
All right, one of the
very
best
well renowned school in the world. In the world. Yes.
But first of all, it's amazing that this gentleman was hired. After you hearing some of the quotes that I'm going to share with you. But I'm happy to say he got fired yesterday from Berklee. He is going to be playing at Jazz Fest this weekend.
Oh, wow.
Some people have made it known to some of the Jazz Fest leadership about this background. Again, I'm not a cancel culture guy, okay?
Yeah.
But I do think it's really important that people know what's going on. You know, you and I've said this, you've said this. Hate is hate, okay?
Yeah.
And if we're going to condemn one type of hate, then we need to stand together and be unified and not justified.
Sure.
And let me share some of the things that this guy wrote. If I could find it. He basically called Jewish people bloodsuckers. And that blamed slavery on the Jewish faith, indicated that Jews are a synagogue of Satan, among other things. Okay, if I could find the rest of the story, I will share some other things. This was not the only stuff he said.
Yeah.
And then claimed that he was speaking as a victim, that all of the negativity that he described related to the Jewish faith. He also went after Ben Jaffe, who is the well-known head of the Preservation Hall, and said that he was basically taking advantage financially of this. Let me just say, I don't want to give this guy too much attention, okay?
Sure.
These are the kind of things that if we are going to improve this country, if we are sincere and if we are true to our word, we spend a lot of time bashing our president and some of the policies, but I want people to think that are listening tonight, take the word Jews out of this and insert something else. You can do African American,
anybody,
Latino, American Asian, whatever it is. People would rightfully be outraged.
Right.
And I would like to think that we are better than this, that when people espouse this, whether it's ye, who we know from the past, or some pro athletes have espoused hate before, that we as a country are at a point that we're going to say, no, stop. We don't accept it.
Right.
That is the way that we will defeat white supremacy. It is the way that we will defeat extremism on the left.
Yeah.
Okay? It's when people to come together of all faiths, even if it's not your faith, your religion, or ethnic, if it's not directed against you, you have to have the courage. At least I'm asking you to have the courage to stand up and say no.
Yeah.
Hate against one is hate against all. And when we get to that point, and I think we're working towards that, okay? When we get to that point, we will have a better society and a better country.
I think absolutely you're right, Arnie, because as I say practically once a week here on the show, we're on the slippery slope of things. And if you allow one group to be vilified, one group to be deported, one group to, as these things happen, every one of those pillars that you take out makes the building crumble. And this is one of those things. And as you said, what you made a great point. Sometimes when you're reading these articles or you hear these stories, replace it with your own ethnic group. That may help you to see the light a little bit better of how this is reflective of something. Take out the name of some group maybe you're not familiar with or whatever, and say, how would I feel if they were talking about my people? Like when we talk to the people from the Ukraine and say, what if they said, let's get rid of Louisiana and everybody in New Orleans has to move and the hell with you because Mexico wants to take, whoever wants to take over. Change it around a little bit, shift the prism so that you can see it from a different point of view.
Right.
And all of a sudden it becomes, I wouldn't like that.
Right.
Well, we shouldn't like it about anybody.
And there may be people listening to us, Cary, tonight that know this gentleman. He's from New Orleans. So they may know him. They may have grown up with him. They may even say, look, I don't think he's, racist, anti-Semitic, hateful. But when you use these words matter, okay?
Absolutely.
And there's nothing subtle about what he said. I'm only giving you, 20% of some of the ugliness of his comments here. Whether you know him, don't know him, he could be the greatest musician in the world. You could be the greatest athlete in the world.
Whatever.
It doesn't matter. It's about being a human being.
Right.
And if you really believe this stuff, first of all, you're using historic tropes that go back centuries, okay, against my community, the Jewish community, but also against the African-American community or the Hispanic community.
Yes.
It is really dangerous to let these kind of comments slide
without
people saying it.
Yeah.
It's not time to be silent. Well, he's coming to Jazz Fest. Probably a good guy. Didn't mean it. First of all, if you say it, I believe you mean it, okay? And, the only thing I'm bewildered by is I don't know how a Berkeley could have hired him. I mean, these statements were made several years in advance of him being hired a year ago.
Unless you didn't vet to that level, which is probably what happened.
Shameful in today's time,
but that's what happened.
That
seems like that was what happens with a lot of people in some of these situations where you're kind of shocked by, especially with the internet stuff, because it never goes away. You can always find it.
So I'm not going to belabor it, but I do want people, hopefully, as our listening on gets to know Carey and myself better, the one thing that I would like to believe that we are is we're always going to be truthful. We're always going to hold firm to our convictions, and we're not going to deviate just because somebody's from New Orleans or somebody's this or that. This is a really, this is a guy that made really vicious, terrible statements that hurt a lot of people, can potentially hurt a lot of people as well. And I hope everybody listening tonight would share that feeling.
Well, as you said, too, because of these sensitive times, and you have a situation like Jazz Fest, which is another safe spaces, people call it, that people go to for fun, for entertainment and everything. Having people are divisive performing even there. And like you said, it's not about me telling Quint Davis, get rid of this guy or whatever. I don't know how they're going to handle it, but I wouldn't want what the particular backlash would be at an event like that for somebody to be there.
Right.
I think there will be protesters in the crowd who will not be happy that this person is there. It will probably cause a lot of disruption or whatever. So they should really think about this person performing because there will be issues.
Yeah.
And you don't want issues.
I have to say, I know Quint Davis. I made Quint aware of this today. Mm-hmm. Again, I did not make a specific request of any action he should take. That's up to Jazz Fest and their board and Quint. But these are these kind of statements are really bad. And
bad.
We know historically, how ugly some people's comments are, and it's just very unfortunate. Let's get into a couple other things.
Well, can I bring up a couple of points before we get off that, because it's very similar to that. But one thing I want to point out to our listening audience, particularly because I was one of the people who contributed in the early years to the African American Museum, which is under attack, the African American Museum in Washington, the Smithsonian Museum. And it's under attack by the Trump administration. They're trying to remove things that are in it. They're trying to remove the lunch counter display that they have in it, which was great. The times that I've gone there, kids are sitting at the lunch counter learning about what that whole situation was, and change language in there. I mean, you can't take slavery out of an African American museum, but it's under attack right now, and I think that people need to realize that and kind of pay attention. There's so much going on in the news, but some of these other things, these underlying things are problematic. And today was a really bad day. I have some friends who actually work in the Justice Department in the Civil Rights Division, and it seems like it's being decimated, and that is a bulwark against a lot of things that happen to people. Some of the very things we're talking about, that people need those protections, and if they don't have those protections from the government, they may not have any recourse.
And to show you how crazy some of the stuff is with these cuts and Doge and all the nonsense, New Orleans, like every other city, has a program called AmeriCorps. And they have I have an ant running on my thing here. Hold on, because I hate ants. All right, ant is now in another world.
This is live radio.
This is live radio, Cary. And they cut the program. They cut the federal funding for AmeriCorps all over the country. New Orleans lost a number of young kids who were part of the program. I mean, I looked at what they get paid. It's like $6,000 a year.
Right.
And they do lots of good stuff. They do research for departments and everything.
It's practically volunteer work just to give people work experience in some different things. And it's been a fabulous program, been around since I think the Clinton years. And it's just, another one of those things. You always ask the question of, when you cut some of these things, the why of like, what is this really harming or causing that's so problematic? I mean, that can't be a scintilla of the federal budget to even save, to cut the entire program.
No, I mean, it's just foolish. I mean, look, if there's inefficiency and waste, certainly go after it. I mean, these are the kind of programs that people scratch their heads and saying it's just mean-spirited.
Right, exactly.
It's just in the meantime, Congress will be taking up in the next couple of weeks the big, beautiful bill,
right?
Okay, that has
tax cuts
for very wealthy people,
right?
Along with
that'll
other
just
stuff.
Increase the deficit they're supposedly trying to cut with these cuts. So those two don't match up, but they'll tell you they do. But.
Right, and even Senator Cassidy, give him some kudos there. He came out and said, "This is ridiculous." So to be terminating a program like that.
And it's just all over the map like that. It's causing all kinds of problems for people everywhere.
Yep. Well, there were a couple really interesting city council things yesterday.
Yes.
One of them was there's real problems in one of our city departments, Public Works.
Yes.
There has been allegations of harassment and other things that came out earlier this year and into the fall. City Council held a committee hearing yesterday, basically filing for an ordinance they'll vote on in another week that will give them the power to really do a thorough investigation of what's going on. And Carey, I can say this: people that the people that work in city government, so many of them get such a bad rap, from the public, and I could tell you in my 6 years and in your 37 years, by the way, do you have some bad employees? Of course, in any organization. But the lion's share of city employees are really good people that work hard, try to do their job for the benefit of people.
Try to serve the public, and I always found a lot of people to be salt of the earth. And like you said, they're people who cause trouble, whatever, and they're high-profile things. But they're like in any organization, they're the outliers. I mean, I can tell you, having been there for so long, there were so many great people who work there, and these people are your family and friends. So, I mean, everybody, you can't just say that my family and friends were good and everybody else is terrible.
Right.
But a lot of people are trying to do a great job, and to be harassed and treated badly on the job is even worse.
Right. And I know the administration said that they're looking into this. They're investigating. They've got an audit as well. All of which is fine. There's nothing wrong with having. No. I mean, first of all, not only is there nothing wrong, both the administration and the city council should both be putting this as a priority.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's nobody that comes to work for government that should feel that anybody else, especially superiors, have the right to harass them, sexually intimidate them. Any of this stuff. It's against the law, first of all.
Right.
And it's just completely unacceptable. So, thank you to the council for taking this on. I think it's important. Hopefully between the administration's efforts and the council's efforts, if there's truth to these allegations, people
some
deserve
actions
due
will
process,
be taken. Right.
Okay. Yeah. But if there is truth, I hope that those that are committing this and perpetrating this, will not be in City Hall much longer.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. I think that there cannot be too much investigation of anything like these. These are pretty serious allegations, so they can't be overlooked.
Right. The other topic we're not going to get into real detail on this tonight, but we would be remiss if we don't at least mention and talk about a little bit, which is this very difficult issue of the sanitation contract in the French Quarter.
Yes.
I know Carey's anxious to take the lead on this. I mean, we only say that half jokingly because one of the owners of our station here is Troy Henry, who is, right in the middle of all this.
Sure.
And, I watched the council hearing yesterday. They did a joint hearing yesterday of two committees. And these are some of the observations. First of all, this is Arnie Filko saying this. J.P. Morrell did a heck of a job yesterday, as did the other three council members. Now, there were only 4 council members present on the dais. But they did a good job asking the questions, the right questions in order to try to get answers. And I felt bad for the 4 people from the administration.
It was a tough situation.
It was. I mean, they were forced to be there. You could tell they did not want to be there. Carey, you've been in that position, and I know how difficult it is. But
and the other piece, Arnie, which is the layer that is worse than anything with this, is the legal layer that's out there. So you don't want to say anything too damning or things that are going to cause even more legal issues or bring you into court or whatever. And that could happen. That could definitely happen.
When we come back, we're going to talk about a couple of aspects of it. Again, we're not going to spend the rest of the show but we thought that it at least needs to be mentioned if we're going to be true to our audience. This is one of the biggest topics in the city right now and one of the most important topics. So why don't we take a break? Again, we'd love to hear from you in the remaining 15 minutes we have with the show. 504-582-9422. We'll be back in just a minute.
Be back soon.
Missed a show? Want to hear that guest everyone's talking about? WBOK is now streaming on all your favorite podcast apps. Just search WBOK Media, hit download, share with a friend, and don't forget to rate your favorite shows 5 stars. Because when our voices are heard, our impact grows.
New Orleans, you want to know what we're talking about? Tune in every Saturday morning from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. on WBOK for Conversations with Ron Richardson. The topics will always be hot and the conversation will be all the way live. Meet us there. We'll save you a seat. We can also talk about you and your business as a sponsor of Conversations with Ron Richardson. Contact Ron at 504-874-4584 or email him at richardsonronald024@gmail.com for more details.
WBOK. Better pay attention. Powered by Cox Business.
The Arnie and Carey Show with Arnie Philco and Cary Grant.
All right, we're back. You know, for those that haven't followed the story, really, let me try to sum it up in just a few words. I mean, what you have right now is a real battle between the mayor and the council.
Yes.
The mayor has canceled the has canceled the emergency contract of Ivy Waste.
Yes.
She had the right to do that under the contract. It was a 90-day notice. So,
yes.
You know, that contract right now is set to terminate July 30.
Yeah.
All right. The council's position is that was a foolish decision. And also, you know, the mayor cannot go forward with the long-term 7-year contract with Troy Henry because the council hasn't agreed to it yet. The council
has to vote on multi-year contracts that are especially past 5 years. I mean, this is a longer than normal multi-year contract.
The council, the issue went up to the district court. The district court ruled that the mayor had the authority to do the long-term contract. But the real nuance, I think that's there is the council ordinance requiring its approval still in place pending the appeal. Yeah. If the answer is yes to that, then candidly, unless the council signs off on the Henry contract,
then it won't
go forward. Right. If the answer is no, then the mayor has the sole authority, and she will go ahead and do this. The 2 points the concerns that I have threefold, I guess. One is, I don't understand. I understand a little bit better the pressure that was put on the mayor to move forward long term. But the reality is it's still hung up in court. They could have waited a little bit until the appellate court rules on it. Because, again, as we talked about a week ago, if the appellate court rules in the city council's favor, you now have literally nobody serving the French Quarter on July 31st.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, that won't happen. There'll be another contract issued.
You're right, but then you create a lot of conflict. Some of the issues, too, are timing because the tourist contract was supposed to end in December. You have a new mayor coming in January. There's those issues, political issues. And you also have a situation where you need to let the court know that you need a quick ruling or whatever if you wanted to do something fast, because the court probably was looking at, we're going to rule in the fall because this thing will still be in effect and we'll just keep going like we're going. But now you're kind of pushing them into, you need a ruling because, you know, this case is not going to go away. The council's not going to drop the case July 30th. I mean, it's not going to happen.
I mean, for the good of for the benefit of New Orleans, you would hope the appellate court will rule in the next 30 to 45 days.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, you need to ask them literally to make sure that they do a quick ruling.
Right. Well, that's one thing. I don't think the mayor necessarily had to do this. I understand. Look, let's not kid ourselves. Politics plays into this. Mm-hmm. You have a mayor right now that's favorable to one side. Yeah. Who knows what's going to happen in the next election, and who you don't know who's going to be mayor, and you don't know what the position's going to be. So I don't blame Mr. Henry at all for wanting to expedite it. Yeah, I understand it, but I just don't think it was the right decision by the mayor, you know, to cancel the emergency contract. Second is, at the end of the day, all these hearings could take place and the facts will come out. This is really going to be up to the judicial system.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Either the appellate court will rule. There could be an appeal of the appellate court.
Right.
But at some point, somebody is going to give an answer. You know, who has the authority to issue a long-term contract,
right,
multi-year contract.
Right.
Is it the mayor exclusively, like the mayor claims, or is the council saying, no, the mayor gets to select, but we have to approve?
Yeah.
That ultimately is going to be resolved legally.
That's the question. Literally, that is the question of this whole thing. I don't think you or I are in disagreement about a mayor issuing contracts of length and time and all that kind of stuff. But it's always been that the council's had to approve that length and time and appropriate for it. So that's the legal question that has to be fine pointed. And when it's fine pointed, it's going to be, that's what the answer is.
Yeah, and this is different than, kind of what the public opinion is. There's a lot of, as we've heard and seen, there's a lot of support within the French Quarter to have Torres' company continue to do it. Okay.
Yeah.
That's totally, in many ways, I'm not saying it's irrelevant. It's always, public opinion is always relevant.
Right.
But it may not have any effect because the decision is going to be made by the court.
Yeah, I mean, it's what you said, and that's a very important point from my point of view, too, because it's not about how the services are, because people can only reference the services they have. So in the future, the services may be even better under the Troy Henry contract. But you don't know that. But that's not what the point is of what's being decided.
Right. And I have to say, look, you and I both know Troy. I consider
absolutely.
Troy a friend. I mean, it's not like Troy's services are bad. He has the DDD contract. Yeah. He does the airport.
Yeah.
I think people generally feel very positive about the work that he's performed.
Right.
Okay. It's just, I think this thing has become very public in a way that people are a little
more politicized than the things you just named. The things you just named is more politicized. Than that. Yeah.
Hey, we have a caller, Mr. Elmore. How are you tonight?
Hey.
How are you, Mr. Elmore?
Hello. Oh man, could do better, but I'm doing better talking to you and my friend there.
Well, we appreciate you calling. What's on your mind?
Well,
tonight?
I'm asking a question that I'm curious about. When does the Supreme Court get involved? When we had, don't add to what I said, when we had the three branches of government through the Nixon administration, how did the Supreme Court got involved in that? Were they instrumental in Nixon resigning?
Boy, now you're aging me. I got to go back and remember.
Congress ran Nixon off. When they decided to bring impeachment, he quit.
Yeah.
They didn't even get to the court.
Now, you see, that's a good question. Now, this is puzzling to me because you know what? I don't always say I have an answer. That's why I call you, because I didn't know. But you know what? I thought the Supreme Court is the supreme authority with the law.
Well, the Supreme Court gets involved on constitutional issues, on federal issues when there's a division between the different appellate districts in our country. And sometimes, on matters that are, I guess I would phrase them as national interest, okay? Now, the Supreme Court does not have to take a case, and in many cases, they don't.
Yeah, they don't.
But when it comes to certain cases, like you've seen, our reproductive rights abortion issue here in the United States, they got involved in that. I think they were on the wrong side of the decision, but that was they got involved in it. Yeah. They got involved in many, many other areas. And, but it really depends on, one, is there a constitutional issue? Two, is there division between different parts of the country on the appellate courts?
Yeah.
And the big issue, Mr. Elmore, that's going on right now, we'll maybe talk about it tomorrow night a little bit, is you have a lot of district courts issuing rulings that prevent the federal government from doing things.
Right.
And what Trump is arguing is, well, you can't do that. You can't have a judge in Oregon, a district court judge, put an injunction on my entire deportation policy.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the issue that's being presented. And I do think that's an issue that probably will come to the Supreme Court.
Yes.
Because it's a pretty fundamental
And some of them already
issue.
have. And some of those kind of issues already have. And they've ruled that you can do that.
Yeah. But I think Nixon went down for other reasons.
Yes.
You and I may, and Carey's old enough now. I still remember Saturday Night Massacre. I wasn't old enough to really understand everything. What it
I
meant.
remember the resignation speech.
Yes. You know
was,
what? But the difference is today and back in Nixon, it was really the Republicans that forced Nixon out.
Yes.
They said enough is enough.
They went to
what
the
you
White
did
House
is
and
wrong.
told them it's time to go.
And, hopefully we're going to see some of our own Republican leaders today, have that same kind of backbone and take some courageous action into the future. Anything else tonight?
Well, look, can I add something?
Sure.
Well, look, that you had me thinking now, which is good to educate people. A lot of people don't have a clue that when we look at the civil rights legislation that was passed during the Johnson administration, a lot of people don't have a clue that the Republicans was very instrumental in having those bills passed, not Democrats. But
Absolutely.
It's very interesting to a lot of people because automatically they think Democrats. No, but it was Republicans.
Yes.
Very liberal at the time and conservative at the time, but they understood the law,
Yeah.
Well, isn't it? It's a good point you're making. Isn't it so interesting how in a matter of a few decades,
right.
how different we are politically? I mean, you're right. The Democrats were the Dixie Democrats.
Yeah.
They were
Dixiecrats, they called them.
Dixiecrats. That's right. And they were not for civil rights, and
right.
And the Republicans, on the other hand, the party of Abraham Lincoln, were very supportive of that. Now look at it today. First of all, when you look at the Republican Party today, which was always the party of military strength and international work, they're completely different now. It's a different Republican Party, and in many ways, a very different Democratic Party as well.
Yes.
Well, we appreciate. Thank you for that historical aspect. Really good question. And a lot of people, I think, including myself, I need to go back to like 8th grade and retake my civics
Do your civics
class.
courses again. Everybody should get a civics book and read.
You have a good evening,
I'm a little
Mr.
older
Elmore.
than you. I'm a little older than you and Gary because I'm 73. So a lot of things I don't forget.
All right.
Okay.
Love to hear from
you.
you. Talk to you later this week.
All right.
Yes, sir. It's a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Thank you, buddy.
You too.
Thank
you. Good call. We love when Mr. Elmore calls. He always bring great points. Well, lots going on. We talked about a number of things, and today is the 100-day mark, Carey.
God help us.
Yeah,
It's 100
and our
years
president's in Michigan, and he's talking about the greatest economy
ever
since Napoleon.
Since the history of man.
And it's a little hard to watch, I have to say.
Oh yeah.
But the polls that came out of the weekend tell a little bit of a different story. There are some pretty negative numbers right now.
There's definitely a wake-up call happening.
Yes, and we haven't really even seen the effects of the tariffs yet.
No, there's going to be some shortages coming, so get ready.
So, really appreciate everybody. Thank you for calling in tonight. Tomorrow night, Carey's going to be flying solo, and then Thursday night, I may be flying solo. We're going to have a really interesting guest talking kind of about the ethics of sports. Pretty interesting topic given some of the things going on in the sports world. So I hope you can join us tomorrow night on WBOK, Elevated Conversations, and again on Thursday night. And again, Carey and I are really enjoying the show. I hope you are as well.
Yes.
And, we're growing the audience and very much hope that you'll feel comfortable calling in and giving us your opinion.
And tell your friends about us. We're here to listen and talk about anything that you want to talk about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night,
I'm going to
everybody.
sign off. Go New York Knicks. My son works for him, and I don't know what the score is, but my Milwaukee Bucks are not done yet. Good night, everyone.
Good night.